family that are watching the sermon on our Facebook live stream, welcome to our worship service this evening. We're glad you're joining us. We're certainly glad that everyone else is here as well. Our reading tonight is a bit of an old story, isn't it? The story of Jesus' birth. I mean, with the exception of some very, very young people that might be with us this evening, it is unlikely that anyone here has not heard this story either directly through coming to church, Sunday school, those kind of things, reading the Bible, or indirectly as it is everywhere this time of year. It's a story that is not unfamiliar. It's a story that goes on and on and on. Emperor Augustus and his census, and Joseph and Mary going to Nazareth and Bethlehem, and baby Jesus in the manger, the shepherds hearing from the angels. I mean, on and on and on. It's a story that is familiar. So what is it with all these words? Why do we hear all these words year after year after year? It's because words matter. Words have power. Because our stories of faith shape our faith and the faith of those around us. And will continue to do so long after we've left here this evening. The fact, the story that we are hearing tonight remains the same year after year, season after season, is our reassurance that the stories that we hear, the stories that we use to shape our faith do indeed matter a great deal. Why is that, I wonder? And I think it's because stories have the power to transform. The words, sentences, and paragraphs, as they coalesce together, have the power to make a serious impact on our worldview and how we see things. They have that kind of power. Our news feeds and our social media timelines have proved time and again that stories can shape how we see things, and they shape our opinions. This Advent season, we've been giving some attention to this iconic movie, It's a Wonderful Life. Some of you may have heard of this movie. It's a pretty good story that speaks to the reality of our lives. It speaks to the hope and despair that we all run into on occasion. It speaks to the roller coaster that our lives can feel like on occasion. It speaks directly to the impact that stories can have on our lives and on the lives of others. The central character, George Bailey, he has plans for life. Plans for his life that are quite extensive. He's going to go to college. He's going to plan to build buildings. He's going to plan to design things and plan modern cities. As the movie plays out, though, very few things that George plans out come to fruition. George is planning on going to college, but he has to wait 4 years in order to save up enough money so that he can go to college. And he's about ready to depart for college when his father dies. And he has to set aside his plans to go to college as he takes over the Bailey building in Lone. That's the family business. It's been around for a while. And George has to take it over because if he doesn't, it's going to fall into the hands of their arch nemesis, the arch fiend, Mr. Potter. Now, I kind of feel like when I say arch fiend and arch nemesis, I should put the word boo up on the screen so that everybody boos. So the arch nemesis and arch fiend, Mr. Potter, is going to come up a couple of more times, so we'll feel free to boo when that happens, because he's that guy. Anyway, George and his fiancée Mary, they get married. And they have grand plans for honeymoon. They'll stay in the best hotels, drink the oldest champagne, eat the richest caviar, and listen to the hottest music. Right up until the stock market crash of the Great Depression. And the stack of cash that they have on hand has to be used to save the Bailey building in Lone. Or more accurately, help the people out, save the people who are the customers and the shareholders of the Bailey building in Lone. At every major turning point in George's life, things seem to get derailed. Even so, George is a pretty good guy. he takes it in stride. He doesn't get too bent out of shape by it. He takes these changes of plans and continues on. He's helping people, oftentimes out of his own pocket. He's making a difference in their lives. He's changing things. He's transforming them. And he keeps helping people. And everything is kind of going, not according to plan, certainly, but everything's kind of going. That is up until the day, Christmas Eve, that Uncle Billy loses $8,000 of the Bailey Building and Loans money. Now, this is a problem, because the bank examiner showed up that day, too. And for bank officers who can't account for $8,000 of the bank's money, when the examiner wants to know about it, things get ugly. And so here it is, Uncle Billy or George on Christmas Eve, one of them is going to jail. George doesn't know what to do, and he's at the end of his rope. And so, after searching for the money and looking everywhere and asking all the people, asking all the questions, he finally finds himself with no choice, but he must return to his arch nemesis, the arch fiend, Mr. Potter, and ask him for a loan to carry him over and straighten out this $8,000 shortfall. The only problem is George has no collateral, save one life insurance policy with a $500 cash value on $15,000 worth of life insurance. Now, that doesn't seem like quite enough. And indeed, his arch nemesis, the arch fiend, Mr. Potter, turns him down outright. And being a very kind person that he is, tells him he's worth more dead than alive. Which gives George this great Christmas Eve theme, tradition, idea of taking his own life so that Mary will get the life insurance. And indeed, he starts the plans to do this very thing. And he goes out to the bridge at the river outside of town, and he's ready to carry out this very un-Christmas-like kind of thing. And he looks down and he sees a man thrashing around in the water. And George, being George, of course, puts other people's needs ahead of his own, and he jumps in to save the man. Although, in truth, it is not a man, it is an angel. It goes by the name of Clarence. Clarence has been dead 293 years. But he's back, and he's back for the purpose of helping George, because George is in some serious trouble. In their conversations following George pulling Clarence out of the river, George tells Clarence that he wishes he'd never been born. Clarence says, well, let's take a little trip down unmemory lane. And they go back in time to see what happens to people's lives if George has never been born. And through this trip down unmemory lane, George begins to see the difference that he has made. The two of them travel back in time, and they see the impact that George has made by showing him what happens in people's lives if he'd never been born. He sees this difference he has made, and he is transformed by this story. He is transformed by the realization that he has, in fact, made a difference in a lot of people's lives. And when he realizes this, he realizes that he no longer wishes he hadn't been born. He no longer wants to take his own life. He runs home in great joy to his family. Let's see how this turns out.
Oh, I could eat you. Where's your mother?
We're looking for you.
Uncle Billy,
Susan, my little ginger snap, how do you feel?
fine. Not a snitch of temperature.
Not a switch of... Hallelujah.
Hello? George! George, darling, where? George, down! George, oh, George,
Are you real?
George,
You have no idea what's happened to me.
I have no idea what happened. Come on, George, come on downstairs. Quick, we're on the way.
Right.
instructed to advance you up to $25,000 stock. Hee-haw and Merry Christmas, Sam Wainwright.
There's some pretty good things in that clip. I really like it when Mary sweeps the table with the Christmas wrap and scissors on it, because that's my reaction every time I try to wrap a present. I have the distinct impression George did not see this coming. George did not see the reaction of people that he had helped over his life. George did not see people coming to his aid in his time of need. Left to his own devices, left to his own mistaken devices, George thinks he's worth more dead than alive. Left to his own twisted thinking, George wishes he'd never been born. And yet, George sees that in spite of his own mistaken ideas and twisted thinking, he has impacted people in his life in profound kinds of ways. And they show him this importance. When it comes his time of need, they come out in force to give him a hand. Now enter the Christ into our lives. The Christ, the Messiah, who shows us how much we matter in spite of our own mistaken ideas and twisted thinking. In spite of the things that we have done and left undone. It is simply the Christ who is born to us this day, who has come to save each of us, save us from our sins, and give us the promise of salvation. As you celebrate this night, and in the next 12 days, think of the times you have made a difference in someone else's life. As you celebrate this night, and the next 12 days, think of the difference that Christ has made in your life. Then give thanks to God. Thanks to God for the gift of Jesus. To God be the glory. Amen. I invite you to please stand as you're comfortable and able. We continue worship in song.